Madam Warden, you've got plans on staying in Owen Sound for
Yep,
three,
I have a backup plan.
3 or 4 days? Oh, that's good.
Okay. Just to be sure, I made sure in my car I had everything packed for the Holstein parade, just in case. But let's just think I'm going to be able to see home between now and then.
Well, that's good advanced planning.
And my Subaru is being well looked after right now at the dealership. So there you go.
Just doing a check-in on attendance before we get started. Councillor Hutchinson will be joining momentarily, and I think we are still waiting on Councillors Body and Greg. But otherwise, we appear to have everyone here. And I can confirm that again during the meeting.
I'm here, Tara.
Thank you.
Okay, Madam Warden, I do have the live stream up, so when you give the signal, I will start our recording as well.
Okay. All right. A verbal signal.
Yep, just when you're ready, say ready to go, I will hit record.
Okay. Well, it's 10 o'clock and I am ready to go.
Okay, we are good.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to call to order this council meeting of Grey County of December 12th, 2024. At this point in time, please join us in the singing of O Canada.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you very much. Good morning, and it's good to see everyone safe in their locations as we do this meeting virtually. At this point in time, Madam Clerk, could you please do the roll call?
Thank you. And I can confirm we have all members in attendance today, with the exception of Councillors Milne and Hutchinson, both of which we expect will be along shortly.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And for item number 4, the land acknowledgement, I want to begin by respectfully acknowledging that we are gathering on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabeg Nation, the people of the 3 fires known as Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations. And further, we give thanks to the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash, known collectively as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, the traditional keepers of these lands and waters since time immemorial. To our south lies the traditional territories of the 6 nations of the Grand River. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and committed to moving forward in the spirit of truth, reconciliation, and friendship with all of our First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. At this point in time, I'd like to ask if there's any declarations of interest. Seeing no hands, Madam Clerk, we can move on to the adoption of the minutes. So we have three different sets of minutes. So the first one is item 6A. It's the inaugural council minutes of December 3rd, 2024. It's recommended that this inaugural council minutes dated December 3rd, 2024 be adopted as presented. May I ask for a mover and a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Dobreen, and seconded by Councillor Bourdignon. Any discussion? All those in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you. Next, we have item 6B. It's recommended that the long-term care redevelopment task force minutes dated November 28th, 2024 be adopted as presented, and the following resolution contained therein be endorsed. That report FRRP 3924 regarding the 2025 draft redevelopment budget be received, and that the 2025 draft redevelopment budget be as presented be forwarded to County Council for consideration. May I ask for a mover and a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Mackey and Councillor McKay. It's now on the floor for discussion. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing no hands, I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you. And we have one more set of minutes. It is recommended that the council and committee of the whole minutes dated November 28th, 2024 be adopted as presented with the resolutions contained therein be endorsed. May I ask for a mover and a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Dickert and Councillor Patterson. Seconded by Councillor Patterson. Is there any discussion? Councillor Patterson, your hand is up. Did you? Oh, okay. That was just to second. Okay, so seeing no further hands up, then may I call for the vote? All those in favor? Excellent. That is carried. Item 7, closed meeting matters. We do not have any, but we do have reports, and we'll begin with 8A, the Board of Health minutes of October 25th, 2024. It's recommended that the Board of Health minutes dated October 25th, 2024 be adopted as presented. May I ask for a mover and a seconder? Thank you. Moved by Councillor Carleton and seconded by Councillor Hutchinson. Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Sorry, Madam Warden.
Oh,
I believe
sorry.
Councillor
Yes.
Eccles has a question.
Thank you, Councillor Eccles. Everybody's faces keep moving around as we have new additions to the meeting. Thank you. Councillor Eccles, you have the floor.
Well, I'll try to just sit still so my face doesn't move on you, Madam President. Just the way that motion was read, do we approve those minutes or receive those minutes?
Okay, so it does say that we are adopting as presented. I'll look to Madam Clerk.
I do believe that we adopt them. We're not approving their correctness necessarily, but we're adopting them as Grey County, who is from the Board of Health, which is one of our boards that is part of Grey County. So it's not approving their minutes as to their correctness, but adopting them as minutes as one of our boards.
Okay.
Did you have a follow-up, Councillor Eccles?
No, I just heard you say we were approving, but
Oh, okay.
we approve, we just adopt. And
Yes.
the motion is, thank you.
Thank you. So to clarify, be adopted as presented. Okay, and Councillor Carleton.
Thank you, Warden Matrosovs. I just want to note that Dr. Era is on the call with us today, so could speak to those minutes.
Okay, all right. So in that case then, welcome, Dr. Era. I see that you've logged on with us. So is there anything that you would like to speak to in those minutes?
Thank you, Madam Warden, and congratulations on the wardenship, and congratulations to the council on your leadership. Good morning, everybody. The highlight probably from the minutes is the work on the opiates, and that's a collaborative work, and the Grey County is taking leadership on the project SOS program and supportive outreach services. There was an award from the Ontario Health System Quality and Innovation Award, and again, it's an award. However, it's a symbol of the level of collaboration and work that the Grey Bruce team is doing to address the crisis, the opiate crisis. that's the main highlight. I can add, Madam Chair, it's not in the minutes, but there was an investigation related to measles, and I do believe it's worth sharing. In November, the Grey Bruce Health Unit received a report of 2 confirmed cases of measles epidemiologically linked to measles outbreak in New Brunswick. Our team was on it immediately, and there were 6 probable cases. All of them are contained to the households of these 2 cases, and there was no additional community spread or exposure risk in Grey Bruce, according to our investigation. It's worth mentioning that all the non-vaccinated households were infected with measles, and all the vaccinated households were not infected. Like, that's a clear cut in that investigation, and that was concluded. All 8 cases finished their isolation, and again, according to the investigation data, no additional community spread or exposure risk within Grey and Bruce. Thank you, Madam Chair. Open to questions as always.
Thank you very much, Dr. Era. Are there any questions for Dr. Era? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands up, so thank you for those further details, and we appreciate your participation this morning.
Thank you.
Okay, that allows us to move. Oh, sorry, we haven't called the vote yet then. So with no further questions, all right, then all those in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the bylaws. It's recommended that the bylaws of 5209-24 and 5212-24 be introduced and be taken as read a first, second, and third time, finally passed, signed by the warden and the clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, and engrossed in the bylaw book. Madam Clerk, we're going to look at all 4 of these together and do one motion.
That is certainly an option in our general practice, yes.
Okay, all right. So with that, then I will read out the 4. We have 5209-24, a bylaw to repeal and replace bylaw 507420 and adopt a policy to guide the procurement of goods and services for the County of Grey. Number 2 is 5210-24, a bylaw to authorize a memorandum of understanding between the City of Owen Sound, Rural Ontario Medical Program, and the Corporation of the County of Grey for the provision of accommodation for medical residents. 5211-24, a bylaw to authorize the disposition of certain lands in Owen Sound as described in Schedule A, known as Westmount. And the 4th, 5212-24, a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the County of Grey. May I ask for a mover and a seconder? Thank you, Deputy Warden Milne. And Councillor Carleton seconds. It's now on the floor for discussion. Any discussion? Okay, seeing no hands then, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And that motion is passed. Thank you. And we're now on to news and celebrations. We'll begin with council, and then we have a couple of items to share from staff members. So first, I'll just look for any hands of council members that wish to share any news and celebrations. Okay, we'll start with Councillor McKay.
Yes, through you, Warden, and good morning, all county councillors. The Santa Claus Parade, I think it's the last one, will be on December 21st in Chatsworth, starting at 10:30. All's welcome when we have a full day of entertainment. Santa Claus will be at the Legion, and our churches and the fire department will all be taking part in the celebrations and serving different kinds of food. And there'll be a cookie sale at the Garfraksha Funeral Home, starting at 8:30 in the morning. So let's hope for good weather.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. Are there other news and celebrations? Councillor Bourdon. Just make sure that you're unmuted. No, we can't hear you. Although your square went green. Still can't hear. While you're sorting that out, I'm willing to bet that you want to talk about Thornbury Old Fashioned Christmas. Okay, so Okay, he's having trouble with audio, but what I can share is in the Town of Blue Mountains this Saturday evening, we will be having our old-fashioned Christmas. It is an ongoing tradition in Thornbury. So it actually starts happening in the afternoon, and then there are activities both for children and adults. We do the official tree lighting at 5:30, along with our fair ambassadors in attendance, as well as the deputy mayor, myself, and others. And as many council members as we can see, they're all busy. Some of them last year were stirring up hot chocolate, so you'll find them everywhere. And with that, if you'd like more information, you can go to exploreblue.ca to find out what the specific activities are. Is there anything else for news and celebrations? Okay, I'm not seeing any further hands. So at this point in time, then I believe Ms. Swanston wanted to share with us a video about the experimental acres. Good morning, Ms. Swanston.
Good morning, Chair. So thank you to you all. I'm Linda Scott Swanston, and I'm relatively recently returned from mat leave as the county's manager of climate change initiatives. And I'm very pleased to be able to share a couple of pieces of climate action good news with you this morning. Firstly, I'm thrilled to let you know that the Rural Recharge electric vehicle charging program was successful in many of our applications to the provincial Charge On program. So Rural Recharge, as you're aware from past updates to council, is a partnership between Grey, Bruce, Dufferin, Wellington, Huron, and Perth counties to roll out a network of publicly accessible fast electric vehicle chargers at no cost to the taxpayer. The idea being to fill gaps in the charging network to allow our residents and also visitors to travel through our region without any range anxiety. Excuse me. So Charge On has awarded us $600,000 in investment for 3 electric vehicle fast chargers in Grey and across the entire Rural Recharge network, $2.3 million. So we're very excited about this investment. For the sites that are part of the Rural Recharge network that were not successful in this round of funding, we've already submitted applications to the federal Zero Emission Vehicles program. So we hope to still be able to roll out the full network. And then as Warden mentioned, I'm also happy to be able to share with you a video around our successful second season of the Experimental Acres program. So Experimental Acres is run in partnership with Grey Ag Services, and it leverages our local farmers' expertise to find farm-based climate solutions. So this video itself is the product of some great work by Olivia Yale and also our partners at Grey Ag, Emily McCaig. So with that, I'll ask Rob to share the video and let the farmers speak for themselves.
Experimental Acres is a micro-grant program for on-farm trials that aim to build soil health. In addition to financial support, the program also offers soil testing, research, and community building events. Farmers know their land best, so participants design their own projects based on their unique questions, interests, and goals.
I'm Peter Kotzeff. I run a mixed farming operation, and my main objectives in my operation are to find the best use for my land and keep the soil in the land. What I'd like to do is find a way to, in a simple, cost-effective manner, to establish cover crops on standing corn. So my biggest cost on my cattle operation is stored feed costs. So anything I can do to extend the grazing season is very beneficial to me.
Agriculture is one of the few sectors that also sequesters carbon in soils and natural areas managed by farmers, which creates the ability to reduce net greenhouse gas emissions, presenting a significant opportunity to create a more resilient future.
My name's Wade Deacon. I farm with my wife Ann, our 2 boys, Buck and Huxley. This home farm is all for forage production for our dairy. We milk about 40 to 45 cows. Traditionally, I would tank that manure using my brother's spreader. And this area here would just be compacted and beat up from tank traffic, and cut in this area would never come back quite the same. I got interested in Experimental Acres to dragline the manure and see how the crop responds from that lack of compaction. The nice thing about soil stewardship around here is our ground's so stony you don't want to work it deep. It's a real regret. It's a terrible life choice.
One of the priority actions in Going Green in Gray County's Climate Action Plan is to support regenerative practices that build soil health through ongoing knowledge sharing, innovative programs, and new income streams. Our goal is to increase the amount of land under beneficial practices to minimize emissions, maximize carbon capture, and build soil health.
My name's Devin Penny, and this is Fairfields. And we grow mostly strawberries, asparagus, rhubarb, sweet corn, and then a smattering of other things. You know, you end up doing a lot of cultivation, and corn itself is pretty hard on the soil. So, but the soil structure just doesn't feel very good the year after. So I've been thinking of trying to do some underseeded cover crops or interplanting so that there is some ground cover. We're reducing tillage, maybe even fixing some nitrogen and that kind of stuff as we go. For our project here, what we've done is we're trying 3 different crops and a control. Learning about the Experimental Acres program, it was kind of the kick in the butt I needed to get going on the project.
As a program that spans Gray, Dufferin, and Wellington counties, Experimental Acres helps to achieve that goal and build a regional network of forward-looking farmers that are trying new things and taking care of the land. Learn more about the program and past projects at grayagservices.ca/experimental-acres.
Thank you very much there. We're joining in applause. Not just the content, but the actual production of the video as well. So our hats off to the whole team that put that together. Is there anything else, Ms. Swanston?
I'll just add that Megan Miles is our Gray County lead on the Gray Experimental Acres program. So I'd like to thank her for her hard work as well. And thank you all for your time.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, and next we have up for news and celebrations from Miss Taylor Corfield about Sydenham Campus. Welcome.
Thank you, Warden. Good morning, County Council. On November 23rd, Sydenham Campus, in partnership with the Business Enterprise Center and Grey Bruce Makers, hosted the Sydenham Makers Market and Campus Open House. This event provides new makers associated with the Business Enterprise Center and the Makerspace the opportunity to sell their products at an established market. The day was a great success, featuring 26 youth and adult artisan vendors, many of whom actually created their products using the equipment provided through the campus's makerspace. The event also served as a campus-wide open house with tenants STEMVox, the Early Learning Hub, Reading Rescue, and the Henry Bernick Entrepreneurship Center all participating. Attendees had a chance to browse the diverse selection of handmade goods and explore the various spaces within the campus. As a result, the Makerspace welcomed several new members, and we saw a total of 468 visitors. The event was a fantastic celebration of community, and we're already looking forward to hosting it again next year. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much for that update. That sounds indeed exciting. And with that, I don't see any further hands from council members, so we can move on then to the last item of business here in our first council meeting of this year, and it is the notice of adjournment. So may I ask for a mover and a seconder to adjourn? Thank you, Councillor McQueen, and seconded by Councillor McKay. All those in favor? And this council meeting is adjourned. Thank you. We'll give our technical staff a few minutes to switch over to the committee of the whole.
We are good to go.
Excellent. All right, then I would like to call to order this committee of the whole meeting of December 12th, 2024. The first item is declaration of interest. Are there any declarations of interest for this committee of the whole agenda? Seeing no hands, we'll move on. Next, we have business arising from the minutes. Any business arising from the minutes? Okay, and we will move on then. We have one delegation this morning. We'd like to welcome the Gray County Federation of Elk Agriculture for an update on bedrock aquifers and private wells. And I understand this will be presented by Mr. Hugh Simpson, but Mr. Keith Reed and Mel Loomis are here as well to answer questions. So welcome to all three of you. We appreciate your time being with us here this morning. And Mr. Simpson, you have the floor. Just looking, there we go. Just make sure that you're unmuted, Mr. Simpson.
Good morning, Warden and council members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this morning. I just want to say before I start, I'm going to be using a more generic technical term for highly bedrock aquifers. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yes, we can. Thank you very much.
Rather than the more narrow regulatory term under the Clean Water Act. And these include things like crystalline aquifers, like you'd see in the shield, and then sedimentary aquifers, fractured and karst bedrock, which are very predominant in your region, and also can include very shallow overburden sand and gravel aquifers. So yeah, I'm just affiliated with the Morwick G360 Groundwater Research Institute at the University of Guelph, where I'm a senior research scientist, and I just want to share some information that I've been discussing with some of the organizations who have an interest in groundwater, I should say, highly vulnerable aquifers and private water wells. It's not advancing. Sorry. There we go. I have a brief land acknowledgement. I know you did one, but I just want to say that I'm visiting virtually. I was hoping to be there in person today, and I apologize for that, but I thought I could probably get there, but I didn't think I'd be able to get back. So having had experience with bad weather from central BC, I know it's better to go with caution rather than zeal. I'm visiting from the Grand River watershed, the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee people. This land is all part of the Haldimand Tract of 1784 lands granted to the Six Nations of the Grand River for their use and posterity forever. This is just an overview of the various researchers at the University of Guelph, the Morwick Institute. Quite a variety of diverse academic and technical knowledge and perspectives. I'll talk a little bit more about some of those as part of a project we're involved with, a minute or two if we have time. But I did want to start with a brief overview of groundwater and its how important it is for providing essential services for society and ecosystems. There can be provisioning services, regulatory services, not in a legal sense, but more in an environmental sense, supporting services through springs and base flows, and also to the Great Lakes. 2/3 of the water that supplies from groundwater supplies the base flow for surface water across the country. And it's also important culturally through mineral springs, hot springs, creating tourist caverns, but also it has very important for Indigenous communities. And in some cases of Ontario particularly, it may be the only source of water supply for farms and other uses. Just a brief overview of the hydrologic cycle. Groundwater is a very important part of it. As you can see here, infiltrating water makes its way down and across to surface water features like streams and lakes or the Great Lakes, which are very close to where you are. And groundwater is typically extracted though through wells, and this is a drilled well. The source of this is the OMAFRA Best Management Practices book on private water wells. I'll be talking about that a little bit more in a few minutes. I just wanted to give this context, but a very important source of water for farming and non-farm use throughout Ontario, particularly rural Ontario. Just an interesting look at some of the bedrock and the locations of highly vulnerable bedrock aquifers in Western Ontario, but also the karst, which is very predominant in the Bruce Peninsula area, and it's also shared across the province. But these green lines and yellow lines indicate outcrops of bedrock below the overburden or the soils, if it would be a more generic term for that. You see this is right across Ontario, and in fact, there's no part of Ontario that doesn't have bedrock underneath the overburden. Regarding the key karst regions, there are a number of karst regions across Ontario. Some of it is shallow and vulnerable because there isn't a protective layer of soil and overburden. But in other areas, it's deep and less vulnerable, but it's there nonetheless. I know where I live, Waterloo region, the southern end, we have karst at the surface, and that is a concern as well. I know in your region, it's also a significant concern as well, and that's been documented in the media recently and discussions I believe you've had at council previously. One of the interesting things about bedrock systems, particularly fractured ones, is they're extremely complex, and the flow systems are very difficult to map out and understand without extensive study. This provides benefits in the terms of availability of water. They're highly productive aquifers usually. The challenge is, though, this water comes from aquifers that can be vulnerable because of a lack of overburden protecting it from materials that might be spilt or put on the surface. Also, they can be highly, the water can be highly mobile in these areas and move very quickly. So as a consequence, you see the person here filling up their water bottle. You don't know water coming from a spring, for instance, or even a well that hasn't been tested, if it's suitable for drinking. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Just want to talk briefly about karst systems. This is a lovely graphic that your source protection region put up that was done by Natural Resources Canada. Karst bedrock is formed where water dissolves at the weak spots in the bedrock, often forming sinkholes, disappearing streams and springs. As mentioned, where shallow or exposed surface water can readily enter karst bedrock systems, moving very quickly, and can also carry contaminants with it. We've got a couple photographs of some outcrops here, one from Owen Sound and one from Tobermory, and you see how fractured it is in case there's some fissures as well. This is courtesy of the Source Protection Region, Saugeen Grey Sauble North Bruce Peninsula Source Protection Region. And then the question that really many landowners might be wondering about is your property on a highly vulnerable aquifer? And this is oftentimes something that's difficult to know. Some mapping has been done by the Source Protection Region. It shows here both the location of bedrock as well as the depth of overburden. So the combination of those two will give you some idea of the vulnerability. But really, this is done at a very high level scale, and it's really what needs to be done is ideally work on the farm, and the farmer or the rural non-farmer might have a better idea from their well records, or if they've been doing some work on their farm, as to what the soil profile looks like and what the depth is and what its composition is. And this really relates into the vulnerability of the land. These soil pit diagrams, which are taken from another part of the world, but really give a good demonstration of how the landowner can understand if there's a protective overburden layer on their property. And this can then inform them as to how vulnerable their property might be to contamination, and just have it in the back of their mind as they're doing things on and around their land. Now, there are existing private water well best management practices. I've been working on this for over, well, I would say close to 30 years. And there's a series of these. As context, private well owners are responsible for protecting their well water and the groundwater that it draws from contamination. And part of that is preventing surface water, things like rainfall runoff or other foreign materials, from entering their wells. So that's is important for a well owner user to understand how they can protect their water supply. And so these images provide a series of steps that a well owner can take to ensure the well is suitable and is properly protected. And that includes, on the left, property that is properly constructed and upgraded where necessary. So this well has had the casing extended above ground surface, which is ideal. You can see a mounding of soil around the casing so that water moves away from the well, so it doesn't go down what they call the annular space, that green fill area around the outside of the casing. And that forces the water down through the soil and cleanses it before it's taken up and used for drinking or some other purpose, be that where that may be. It's also important to test your water to make sure it's suitable. And there's free testing through your public health unit for bacterial indicators. And it's also possible to do testing of your water for other materials, fuels, or other potential contaminants through private laboratories, and the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks maintains a list of those. And then where necessary to treat. And sometimes, particularly where you're dealing with highly vulnerable systems like a karst system, where effectively you're looking at something that's like a surface water, you might want to treat that until you confirm through testing and maybe some investigation of your water system as to whether it's suitable for treatment without consumption without treatment. And then finally, at the end of the lifestyle cycle of your well, to decommission, that is, plug and seal it where necessary, according to regulatory requirements. And here you see the well casing is torn down below ground surface and backfilled with proper plugging materials. Now, there are a number of private water well resources and services available. Key resources and services include the Source Protection Region and the committee, which I suspect some of you are members of, because that's an important role to play to bring your insight to that committee. And the Source Protection Regions deliver programs to raise awareness and educate the rural community. They're also doing work, as I understand from talking to the risk management official, to characterize and map highly vulnerable groundwater resources like karst groundwater systems throughout your source protection region. You also have, and you had your local public health representative earlier, and they have an important role in distributing water sample test kits, and then also providing interpretation and advice to well users related to water test results, particularly bacterial indicator results. And then finally, there's the province of Ontario through a series of ministries, Environment, Conservation and Parks, Ministry of Health, Public Health Ontario, and OMAFA for providing information on private water well best management practices and regulations, and free testing of water samples, as I mentioned before. Currently, I'm involved in a project to update the private water well BMP materials, the guidance materials, and that includes evaluating the 2003 water well BMP book that was brought out in response to the Walkerton tragedy, and also the 2021 Rural Groundwater Fact Sheets, which I co-authored with one of my colleagues, Jim Mizik, who's now a retired senior water engineer within OMAFRA. Part of this research team is Dr. Sherry Longboat, who is the science lead on this, as well as Dr. Jan Levison and Dr. Heather Murphy. I'm involved as well as the project coordinator and through my relationship with farm and rural non-farm organizations. The project is titled Advancing the Science of Knowledge Translation and Transfer Using a Community Engagement Approach, and this involves the co-development of private water well best management practice awareness and education materials. It's a 3-year project funded through the Ontario Agri-Food Innovation Program under the Knowledge Translation and Transfer Research Project stream. And basically what we're doing is gathering experiences and knowledge of community-based and technical organizations to better translate and transfer knowledge about private water wells and groundwater management for the rural and farm communities. There's 5 research objectives. We're currently working on about number 3 at this point. We're collecting that information through a series of meetings with community-based organizations and technical knowledge holders, and we hope to publish updated materials. This one says a book. It's looking more like a series of fact sheets, anywhere from 6 to 10 pages long, and then we'll finally document how we might share this information more effectively. We have a series of project partners from the First Nations community, from the farm community and rural community and cottagers. We also have a series of agency and government contributors to this, as well as the private sector. And our partner organizations are within OMAFRA, it's out of date, and the Groundwater Project, which is an organization that is sharing this information internationally in different languages. So this is ideal in Ontario with the changing rural population, where you have groups moving from the cities, or also from as new Canadians where their first language may not be English, and this will allow them to have some of this technical information in their first language, which is always better, ideally. And so we're working, as I mentioned, with farmers, rural residents, cottagers, public health, and environmental agencies. I didn't mention the public health, and the provincial and federal government, and water well contractors. And with that, I'll stop. And I have another slide on my credentials in case you question them, but I can bring that up later if you need to. But yes. Anyways, thank you very much. A very quick run through. Happy to answer any questions.
And thank you for the details that you provided in your slides as well as your explanation. So at this point in time, yeah, we're just going to remove that so I can have a look to see who is here. So I'll put it out to council members if they have any questions for either Mr. Simpson or Ms. Loomis or Mr. Reed as well, who is also on deck for questions. We'll begin with Councillor Eccles.
Thank you, Madam Warden, and through you to Mr. Simpson, Dr. Simpson. In that last slide, and looking out the window today, you talked about snowballing. Doing not something that are we sampling snowballs, or what did you mean by?
That would be easier. Yeah. No, it's a form of behavioral science research where you have some initial knowledge about who is involved and has an interest in a particular project. So I might come to you as a council member, and you know the community much better than you do. And you might say, you might also want to talk to these other people. So in a sense, it gains momentum and size as it moves, like a snowball would. But so we start off with some key knowledgeable people, and then they point us in direction of people who we might not be aware of as researchers. Or even practitioners. And so it gives us a better sample of an input from the broader community, people we might otherwise miss because we don't know about them simply because we've never met them or heard about them before. So it's a technique for being comprehensive and exhaustive, if you will. Yeah. So I know it's a curious term, so I appreciate that. That's funny.
Thank you.
You're most welcome.
Okay, thank you very much. And next we'll go to Councillor Dobreen.
Thank you, Warden Matrosov, and good morning. More of a comment, actually. Thank you for your presentation and for all the consultation that you're doing in the research. We're grateful to the ministry for not imposing fees on the free public well testing, private well testing. Yeah. I also am grateful that you are in contact with the source protection agencies. One thing that I wanted to comment on is that through the Saugeen Conservation Authority, and I would believe other conservation authorities, there is funding to assist property owners in decommissioning those old wells. And that might be something just to share out there for the listening public, that if they're looking to get some assistance in decommissioning those old wells, there's help out there. Thank you, Warden.
Okay, no further comments there. Okay. So with that then, I'll look for any other further hands. Not seeing any, so thank you again for sharing all of those details. Thank you to all three of you for taking your time to be with us here today. And with that, Madam Clerk, do we need a motion to receive?
We don't necessarily, unless there's direction coming from council, no motions required.
Okay, thank you. So with that then, thank you again very much to the three presenters, and we will then at this point in time move on to item 5.
Thank you.
And with that, we'll move on to determination of items requiring separate discussion. And we have, I believe we have 5 items listed under number 6 on the consent agenda. So may I put a call out for items that council members wish to pull before we move on to the consent agenda motion? Items 6A through E. Okay, not seeing any hands there. So then, Madam Clerk, then I think we're ready to proceed. So it's recommended that the following consent agenda items be received, and that staff be authorized to take actions necessary to give effect to the recommendations in the staff reports, and that the correspondence be supported or received for information as recommended in the consent agenda. May I ask for a mover? I see Councillor Gregg is moving, and or is it a question? Was there an item that you want to pull, Councillor Gregg? Okay, so just if you want to unmute yourself before then I put the call out for a mover and a seconder. Go ahead, Councillor Gregg.
It's just 6E, and I just want to make sure that, is there a report or a formal letter already generated to that request, or it sits there just as a request that was added to the agenda within the last couple of days?
Okay, Madam Clerk, I'll look to your direction about the preparation of that letter.
Sure, staff have prepared a letter, because the deadline to submit it would be tomorrow on December 13th. Staff have prepared a letter, should council support the motion here, to provide a letter of support to Georgian College. That would be sent out prior to the deadline.
Okay, so with that, Councillor Gregg, are you looking to pull that item or you're good? Okay, thank you. So in that case, then I will then I'll put a call out for the consent agenda. So Councillor Bourguignon, are you looking to pull an item or are you looking to move?
Move the item.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bourguignon moves and seconded by Councillor Dobreen. Thank you. And we now have it on the floor for discussion. Seeing none, then I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, that allows us to move on to item 7, which are, we just have one item that has been listed as for direction and discussion. And Madam Clerk, did you want me to look for a mover and a seconder first, and then you'll speak to it?
Sure, that would be great.
Okay, so may I ask for a mover and a seconder for item 7, which is items for direction and discussion. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Pringle, seconded by Councillor Eccles. Thank you. It's now on the floor for discussion. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Warden. This report for council today is the annual committee appointment report. Comes each year to appoint council members to the various agencies, boards, and committees that require a council appointment. So there are 3 bodies that are not subject to this report today, as their terms of reference state that their membership will run the term of council or will run until the mandate has been completed. So these are the Long-Term Care Committee of Management, the Long-Term Care Redevelopment Task Force, and the Urban Roads and Rural Exchange Task Force. If the recommendation, however, is supported today, staff will be bringing forward an amended terms of reference for the Roads Task Force, which proposes to increase the membership to include members from each municipality to a maximum of 9. There is currently, I believe, 6 on that committee, but it doesn't have representation from each municipality. So there's a feeling that that task force would benefit from that additional membership. So if this recommendation is supported, that will come forward in January.
Okay, so that will come forward in January. Now, Madam Clerk, I understand that we do have some positions where we have more than the maximum number listed. So I don't know if perhaps it might be helpful if a screen could be shared about these items.
Yes, and actually I will note, since the publishing of that report, we've had a few council members that have indicated interest in filling some of the vacancies as well that are showing up in there. So we've received interest from Councillor Gregg to sit on community services, Councillor Keaveney from the Board of Health, Councillor Boddy and Hutchinson both for the PDAC committee, and Councillor Hutchison on the Agricultural Advisory Committee. And as you note, the Budget and Finance Committee does have more members interested in positions available. So absent any change to the terms of reference, an election would be could proceed to vote for the members to fill those that committee. So we only have vacancies left on accessibility and stewardship grade Bruce, given the interest that's been brought forward to date. So staff are seeking the feedback on wishes of councillors on any interest in filling those further vacancies. And then an election could proceed for Budget and Finance as well.
Okay, so I do see some hands starting to be raised. I'll ask if it's possible, please use your virtual hand, because then it bumps your image up to the top. And so, Madam Clerk, we're going to hear from individuals whether or not they wish to remove their name from the one where we have more members than we need, and also look to those vacancies that you've identified. I do wonder if it's possible to share a screen where you can show us the ongoing shift in names, the additions since what we've had printed in eScribe. Thank you. So with that, then I'll start with Councillor McQueen.
Thank you, Madam Warden. And I would maybe have interest in the stewardship grey Bruce. I see there's a vacancy there, and I think that sort of falls up maybe a little bit with my background, maybe a little bit. So
Excellent, thank you. And it is certainly an excellent group of individuals to work with Stewardship Grey Bruce and Councillor Bourdignon.
Thank you, Madam Warden, through you. Just wondering with Budget and Finance Committee, since there's 18 of us, and I see that there's, you know, I don't mind having a broad selection of people in that. Is it possible through you to the clerk to amend the terms of reference to have the warden and I believe it would be 6 members, you know, because there are 18, so we're not touching quorum, and that's such an important committee in my mind that the more ideas on there. So I just didn't know if that's an opportunity, Madam Warden.
Okay, so Madam Clerk.
Yes, thank you. And through you, it would be possible to amend those terms of reference and direct staff to perhaps bring back the increased membership proposal with that other committee that's coming forward in January 9th. So if council would like to do that, I would suggest an amendment could be in order that you'd insert an additional clause to amend the terms of reference for the Budget and Finance Committee to add additional members. And that further appointments to that committee would be deferred to January the 9th, 2025, when that report's considered.
Okay. Thank you. And next we'll go to Councillor Carleton.
Thank you, Warden Matrosovs. I would make that motion. I agree with Councillor Bourdignon. I think that's a very important committee, and to have some more on there, I think would be of value. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. And let me just go through the rest of the hands, and then we can circle back to that motion, Councillor Carleton. And we'll go to Councillor Dobreen next.
Thank you, Madam Warden. And my question is to the terminology. Are we looking to include 6 members so that we always seek 6 members, or will the language appear to be 4 to 6 members so that we have flexibility in the future?
Madam Clerk.
Thank you. It could be either of those options. From a clerk's department's perspective and dealing with the terms of reference, we do prefer more flexibility so that we don't have to change them every time there's a new appointment. So, but any of those are options to consider, and we would take direction.
Okay.
Madam Warden?
Yes, follow up.
Then if the mover and is amenable to that language being flexible, I would leave that up to staff.
Okay, thank you. And we'll finish this note. I see Councillor Bourdignon, your hand is up.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Madam Warden, just in relation to that, I would say up to 6 members in the terms of reference, and I would second if Councillor Carleton as the mover was amenable to that, I would second her motion.
Okay, great. So with that, Madam Clerk, do you want us to do that as a separate motion and finish voting on the one that's on the floor right now?
This motion put forward would amend that main motion. So yes, if that one could be voted on, and it will change the main motion, and it will take out the Budget and Finance Committee appointments, move it to January, and then along with the staff report for the Urban Roads and Road Exchange Task Force. And I can show that motion should it be helpful to anybody.
Yes, I think that would be helpful. I do see in eScribe the second motion with the list to fill in, but we'll take it in the order that you need. So it is being moved by Councillor Carleton. I'll just ask if there's anything further on the wording of that motion, Councillor Carleton.
No, and I'm agreeable with the idea of 4 to 6 if that flexibility helps staff.
Okay, so we've got it moved by Councillor Carleton, seconded by Councillor Bourdignon.
Sorry, was that showing up for everyone, or have I not hit the right?
No, I'm only seeing the gallery still. And okay, the screen is being shared, and yes, and I do see a question from Councillor Greig. Councillor Greig?
My only question is to staff. Does staff have an approximate number of the dollar cost for every role that we add as at a board level to each committee for for each member? Do you break it down to be to the point where you can say like every additional appointment comes at a cost of like $750 or $1,200 a year?
Probably give a, sorry, I could probably give a rough estimate. It would depend on a lot where the member was coming from, but I would estimate per meeting, it would probably be around $300 to $400 per meeting, depending on how many times per year that committee meets per member.
Okay. Okay, I don't see any hand for further follow-up. I don't see any other further hands, so it looks like we are ready to call the vote on that particular amendment. Okay, so it's been moved, it's been seconded, we've had discussion. I'll ask all those in favor. Okay, and that is passed. Thank you. Okay, so Madam Clerk, what is next for our, what would you like to do next?
So we, if, excuse me, we still have a couple of vacancies on the committee. So if there is further interest for any of those to be filled, I would record that, and then an amending motion could be put forward to further add those appointments into the existing ones in the report, and I can bring that up on the screen when it's ready as
Okay,
well.
so you'd like us to go back to the main motion now, pass the main, and should that main motion pass, then we'll do a second motion with the updated names that have been further added. Is that what you're suggesting?
And before we even vote on the main motion, just to get further indication from councillors on those vacancies for accessibility. And
Okay.
I believe Councillor McQueen has stated he's interested in stewardship Grey Bruce.
Correct. So if you, could you please, because the only thing that we saw was the original circulated report, can you share your screen again so you can show us what those updates are?
Just gonna move here.
And we'll make sure that we've captured everybody's interest. While that screen is coming up, I do see Councillor Gregg's hand up. Councillor Gregg?
I was just going to inquire with staff if you still had a vacancy on the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee, and if I could learn generally what day they're meeting. When I click the hot link, it's going to SharePoint, so I'm just on a secondary device and not credentialing in on for that answer.
Okay. I'm sorry, Councillor Gregg, I can't remember the day of the week that those meetings have been called. I have been serving on that. The frequency is not great. It does depend on when the items come up from the lower tier municipalities.
I can note we've set tentative schedule for that committee. So the meetings are anticipated to be February the 12th, May the 15th, July 17th, September 18th, and November 20th, all at 2 p.m.
And the day of the week is?
That varied, but Wednesdays in February and Thursday in May, Thursday in July, Thursday in September, and Thursday in November. So we tend to veer to the Thursdays as that's a relatively available date.
Okay, so does that help, Councillor Gregg?
I can offer myself to that vacancy.
Excellent, thank you. So Madam Clerk, does that mean that we've filled the vacancies then?
That has, so I can bring it up on the screen here. The highlighted green area, if you're able to see that, are the additional ones that we've received since the publishing of the report. So I would suggest it's in order at this time to put an amending motion that adds these councillors to the relevant committees, amends the main motion, and then that main motion can be voted on as a whole.
Okay, great. So with that, then I'll look for a mover and a seconder for this amendment to add those names. Thank you. Moved by Deputy Warden Milne and seconded by Councillor Dobreen. It's down on the floor for discussion. Okay, all those in favor? And that amendment motion is carried. Excellent. So Madam Clerk, you're bringing us back to the main motion. And may I just inquire where we are in terms of where we had more names? What was what do you need from us in terms of passing a motion for this?
So with the motions that have been passed so far, we have our main motion with all that was presented in the report. There's been the additional names have been added, and then the council has directed that terms of reference come forward amending Budget and Finance Committee. So, and that appointments to that committee are deferred until January.
Excellent. Okay, great. So then with that, we are back to that main motion, which has been amended in the ways that has just been demonstrated. And I don't see any further hands, so I think we're ready to call that vote. All those in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you very much, everyone, for volunteering for the various different roles, and thank you, Madam Clerk, for walking us through that. Okay, so with that, then we are now ready. It is time for us to go into closed meeting matters. So it is recommended that the committee of the whole does now go into closed session pursuant to section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended to discuss contractor negotiations, a position plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or board. May I ask for a mover and a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Dickert, and thank you, seconded by Councillor Hutchinson. Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, thank you. That is carried. So we'll take a moment for the technology